So I was thinking a little bit about your discussion questions this afternoon. Did you find the discussion helpful? Yeah? And around issues like this, there's two ways to approach it. Yeah? Most of your questions this time were organized around the approach of, what are the things I haven't done that I should do? Yeah? And then the last question was, okay, what can I do? The first four were more like, what's blocking me and what's impeding me and what's the result of this? And so really looking at the side of the disadvantages. Yeah. And so of course that's always necessary, when we're attempting to change, to see the disadvantages of something. But it's very important that we always remain very balanced, because if we only look at the disadvantages, there is the tendency for us to start beating ourselves up about, I have this negative habit, and I've had it for a long time, and I know it's not good for me, and I know I should change it, and why can't I do it, and something's wrong with me because I can't change it. Yeah? And we get into that way of thinking, which is totally unproductive. Yeah? So we very much have that tendency to do that. So it's very important in these kinds of topics and discussions and so forth, that we also learn to approach things with what are the advantages of doing something and how can I do it? Okay? Yeah, because sometimes when we see, like you can see in this text right here, he talks about the advantages of something in each section before he talks about the disadvantages of, messing up. But it's very important for us to always focus on the advantages of something, because if we see the benefits, then our mind becomes more receptive, more eager to do it. Whereas if we're only looking at the disadvantages, then we can very easily get discouraged. Okay, can you see how this works sometimes in yourself? Yeah, so it's really very, very important to focus on the benefits and focus on what you can do, what you want to do. It doesn't mean that you need to do it perfectly all at once, but it's very helpful for us to have a mind that is looking forward to what we can do and what we want to do. And then it gives us a way to slowly go in that direction. Okay? So I think that applies to, to many things in our life in general, as well as in Dharma practice. Yeah? And it's interesting in the seven limb prayer, first we have confession, that's the third limb, and that's followed by rejoicing, the fourth limb. Okay? So we not only open up and, have regret for our mistakes, but we also rejoice in our own and others' merit. And that's very important to do, and our own and others' virtue and good qualities. Okay? So we need to learn how to work with our mind in a skillful way. And if we only focus on the side of what I'm not doing, what I should be doing, and how come I'm not doing it, we're going to dig ourselves in a hole that is not going to help us do anything. Yeah? So we have to be sure to always see the benefits and always see a path to take to get to where we want to go. Yeah? And then we can, when we see the benefits, we feel encouraged, we want to do it, we see there's a path, then we start doing it. Okay? And so to learn to really rejoice and give ourselves credit for what we can do, and not just continually, have this attitude of, I should be like this, but I'm like this. And I should be like that, but I'm like this. You know? Because that attitude is not very helpful at all, is it? In fact, it's quite unhelpful, and we should get rid of it. So we need the balance of both things, But so we have to pay attention to that, and make sure to keep ourselves balanced, and not go off one way and not go off the other way. Make some sense? Yeah? Now the question is, can you catch yourself when you're getting unbalanced? Yeah? Can you notice you're doing it? Or is there so much of a habit of beating up on yourself that you don't even notice you're doing it? Yeah? So this is where introspective alertness and mindfulness come in. Mindfulness to stay focused on, also the beneficial side and what we want to do, and introspective alertness to check up and see if we're keeping our mind in a good state, or if we're letting it just follow old habits of putting ourselves down and telling ourselves it's just too hard, it's just not possible, Because for some people, that's their usual mental state. Yeah. Usual mental state is, I can't do it. I should be better than I am. What's wrong with me? Maybe that's you? Is that your typical mental state? Is that realistic? Is it beneficial? It's certainly not beneficial. And it's not balanced, so it's certainly not realistic either. So we have to be aware of, one of the questions was old habits. This is one that you need to get rid of. So instead of going, oh, why can't I get rid of the old habit of always beating myself up? What's wrong with me? What's impeding me from getting rid of the habit of always thinking negatively? What's wrong with me because I always tell myself I can't do it? Do you see what we're doing? Yeah? That's classic. What's wrong with me because I keep telling myself I can't do it? It's like, what? Yeah. So we have to catch those, those typical mental states and change them. Yeah? And not just let them be. Yeah, we have to really cultivate, a different attitude and train ourselves in that different attitude repeatedly, and always rejoicing when we do it. Instead of, well, I trained myself in that attitude, but the old one came back 5 minutes later. Yeah? Okay? But always, learning to give ourselves credit, learning to rejoice at our own and others' virtue. Yeah. Learning to make our minds happy. Yeah. And it's not expensive. Yeah. You don't need to buy something to make yourself happy. You don't need to do something special or go somewhere special or meet someone special. You just do it with your own thoughts. Mm-hmm. Okay, you don't need a prescription drug. Yeah. You just do it yourself. Mm-hmm. Okay. So So very important to keep the mind focused in that way. Having said that, now we're going to go into the dukkha of pervasive conditioning, which is the real, the dukkha that is very difficult to see, where we easily can get stuck. Okay, so it starts out, if you reflect on the dukkha of pervasive conditioning. Okay, so let's just start out with that line. The dukkha of pervasive conditioning means being born with the 5 aggregates that are under the influence of ignorance and polluted karma. So our 5 aggregates, that means the body and mind. Yeah, so the body is the first aggregate, and then there's 4 mental aggregates. One is feeling, which means happy, unhappy, neutral feelings. Then the next one is discrimination or discernment, being able to identify different objects. The next one is volitional factors or compositional factors. It's a grab bag for all the other emotions and mental factors. Yeah, we put them all in that one. And then the 4th one is consciousness, which refers to our 5 sense consciousnesses and our mental consciousness that each specialize in knowing a particular kind of object. Okay? So when we take the body and mind, the first aggregate, the body, the 4th through the 5th aggregates of the mind, when we take these, the 2nd through the 5th aggregates of the mind, when we take these due to ignorance, due to craving, then that is the meaning of the dukkha of pervasive conditioning. Because we have ignorance as the cause, it leads to afflictive emotions. Through those we create karma, polluted karma. Through that we take rebirth. So that is just this whole situation of being born in samsara, in cyclic existence, going round and around and around each lifetime. Okay, so most of the time we aren't even aware we're in cyclic existence. When you wake up in the morning, you don't say, I'm in cyclic existence. I'm here due to ignorance and afflictions and karma, and it's a hellhole and I need to get out. You wake up in the morning and say, what kind of pleasure can I have today? Yeah, or what idiot do I have to see at work? Okay? But we need to have this awareness of what our basic situation is. Did you ever wonder why you were born? Yeah? Did you ever wonder as a kid, why was I born? Why am I me? I used to wonder, why was I born me? Why wasn't I born somebody else? And, in a whole different setup, with a whole different situation. Why was I born who I was? Yeah? And so when we understand the evolution of cyclic existence, then we see that all of this can be traced back to the ignorance that doesn't understand reality, and specifically the ignorance that projects on people and on phenomena a type of a mode of existence, a way of existing that those things don't really have. Yeah? And so due to this false way of apprehending things, then we get attached to ourselves and what we think is going to bring us pleasure. We get upset and angry and hostile towards what's going to make us miserable. Okay, and then we act trying to get what we want and be free from what we don't want, but never really know the real cause of happiness and the real cause of suffering. Yeah? So once we are born with these 5 aggregates, once we take another rebirth, yeah, then automatically what comes with the package of rebirth, okay, are these extra things that they don't tell you about when they sell it to you. You know how sometimes you buy things, but they, you know, the small print is like, you can't read it, it's really small, so you don't really know what you're getting into until you got the thing. So this is what samsara is. Birth! We all celebrate birth, don't we? So-and-so's having a baby, this is wonderful, how happy we all are, you know, there's birth. But what's the fine print of that comes along with birth? Aging, which happens the second moment after you're conceived. It's not that aging happens late in your life. Aging starts in the second moment after conception. You know, another part of this fine print, sickness. Yeah. The grand finale, death. That's in the really small print. Yeah. And then there's some other things that happen in between, like trying to get what we want and not being able to get it. Yeah. Or getting what we want and it doesn't satisfy us and it brings us more problems. And then, of course, having all sorts of problems that we don't want. Yeah. So those 3 are also in the small print. Yeah. So, you know, when somebody dies, the coroner has to write what the cause of death is. Yeah? Nobody ever writes birth. But birth is the cause of death, isn't it? Yeah? When you're looking at it, the real cause of death is birth. Because if we're not born under the influence of ignorance, then aging, sickness, death, and all the other problems can't happen. Think about it. Yeah, what is the cause of death? We should write birth. So what we see here is a system in which our uncontrolled mind, or put it this way, the mind under the influence of ignorance, is running the show, and we're experiencing the results of that, of the ignorance and afflictions and karma. And at the same time that we're experiencing the results, we respond to the results with affliction, and we create more karma for more rebirths. Okay? So this is like some kind of manufacturing company that whatever you buy, they make it so that you have to buy their next brand afterwards. You know, you're hooked into the next thing, because if you try and shift brands, you're going to lose all your data. Huh? Yeah, like Monsanto. That's a good example. Like Monsanto seeds. Yeah? You have to buy their seeds. You can't buy any other seeds. Yeah? Even though theirs are genetically modified, and you don't know what the long-term result of them is going to be, you are hooked. Yeah? And you get fined if you try and buy something other than Monsanto seeds. Yeah? So this is like cyclic existence. Yeah? We are hooked by our ignorance and our craving. And so we just create more karma more afflictions, more karma, more afflictions, more karma. And we can see this in our life. Okay? So, as I've been saying, whenever we experience happiness or suffering, that's a result of our previously created karma. Okay? So let's say we experience some happiness. Okay? Whatever kind of happiness it is. That's a result of positive karma that we've created in our previous life. That positive karma was still created under the influence of ignorance. That's why it ripened in cyclic existence. Okay, but we have that happiness, and how do we usually respond when we have happiness? Yeah, we grasp and we crave, and I want more. We get attached to it. We don't want to separate from it. So, as a response, the happiness is the ripening of the previously created karma. We respond to it with craving and clinging and attachment. That creates more karma. Because motivated by craving, clinging, and attachment, we do all sorts of things to get what we want and to keep what we have. And that creates more karma that produces more rebirth. Okay? We experience a suffering situation. You get sick, let's say. Or a very good friend betrays your trust. So we're unhappy. How do we respond to that unhappiness? Hello? How do you respond? Anger. This is not fair. I don't deserve this. I'm mad at the person or whoever it is that caused this. I shouldn't have this. And then out of our anger, we do more actions to try and get rid of whatever it is that we think is causing us suffering, and in the process create more karma for more rebirth in samsara. Underneath it all is ignorance. Yeah, the ignorance that doesn't understand the reality of how things exist and instead projects this false way of existence onto them. And a second kind of ignorance, the ignorance that doesn't understand what the causes of happiness and suffering are, and is completely confused about that. Because we think craving and attachment to what makes us happy is the cause of the happiness. And we think anger at what interferes with our happiness and causes us problems, we think anger is the cause of happiness, because it's going to destroy everything that's bugging us. So that's coming from ignorance, because in fact neither the attachment nor the anger bring us happiness. They bring us more problems. Okay, so the anger that doesn't understand the actual causes of happiness and suffering, and, gets it all upside down. So that even though we want happiness, we experience suffering, or we create the causes for suffering. Not just once, but again, and again, and again, and again. Yeah. And so that is why they say it's cyclic existence, because we keep doing it again. We can also see that once we take a body like this, like I said, we think, oh, birth is so wonderful. Wow, somebody's having a baby, this adorable, cute baby. Yeah? Somebody said babies better be cute, otherwise they wouldn't be able to stay alive. Yeah. But you look, what do we find so cute about a baby? It cries, it pees, it poops. Yeah? And once in a while it smiles. Yeah? But we love babies. Yeah? They're just so adorable. It's funny, isn't it? Yeah, it's totally irrational. Completely irrational. But as soon as we get this kind of body, yeah, that is going to get old and sick and die, then, we know there's definitely going to be some dukkha of pain in our lives. Yeah, and there's no way around that because of the nature of this body. Yeah, whatever kind of body we get in samsara, it's going to end in death. Even you have, this Beverly Hills kind of God realm existence that's better than the actual Beverly Hills. Yeah, it still is going to end with aging, sickness, and death. So this is why the Buddha left the palace life and became a wandering mendicant, because he was seeking a way out of this mess. Okay? So when our author here says, if you cling to the three realms, that is not renunciation, meaning if we are desiring rebirth in the three realms, we are not renouncing dukkha. And if we don't renounce dukkha, we aren't going to create the cause to be free of it. Because we're still going to think that somehow the dukkha of change is really happiness, and the dukkha of pervasive conditioning is okay, no problem with it. The only one we don't want is the dukkha of pain. The other two are okay, especially the one of change, because we call that happiness usually. So we're actually craving for more dukkha, for more unsatisfactory conditions. Are we ignorant, or are we ignorant? Yeah? Do you begin to get some sense of what ignorance is and how deeply ignorant we are? Even though we think we're so smart because we can send people to the moon and we can make computers. But in terms of the Dharma, in terms of understanding our basic situation, we are profoundly ignorant. Yeah? And this kind of ignorance has nothing to do with ordinary IQ or ordinary education. Because you can have people who are graduates of unique, elite universities who are very, very ignorant from a Dharma viewpoint. And people who have not much secular education who are very wise from a Dharma viewpoint. Okay, so what we call smart and what we call stupid are, very different from a Dharma perspective. Okay, so if you reflect on the dukkha of pervasive conditioning, karmic deeds are endless. If you think we've been reborn infinite times without any beginning. There is no beginning to rebirth because nobody created rebirth, because there's always a previous rebirth before it. So all of our karmic deeds are endless. We have no dearth of karma on our mind stream, that can ripen into rebirths. This is why purification is so important, okay? So karmic deeds are endless. And then, as a result of the karma, we get reborn, you know? So pervasive, the dukkha of pervasive conditioning. So what situation are we born into? You suffer with too much, you suffer with too little. True or not true? Yeah? If you have a whole lot of money, you have one kind of suffering. If you have very little money, you have another kind of suffering. Both of them are unsatisfactory, aren't they? Yeah. Think about it. Would you like to be born Bill Gates? Think about it. Yeah. Usually, okay, you have tons of money, but you can't walk down the street. Yeah? Bill Gates cannot do the most ordinary action that we take for granted, like walking down the street, because he would be mobbed. His children can't go out and play in the street. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, after school we all went out and played in the street. Yeah? Nowadays, the kids can't play in the street. They have to play in this. They have to have an organized activity, you know, because they no longer can be creative kids. They have to go have this lesson and that lesson and the other lesson. But you know, Bill Gates' kids can't do that, because what would happen if one of his kids were kidnapped? Yeah? There's a huge risk of one of his kids getting kidnapped. Yeah? The kids can't go out and play like we went out and played. Yeah? I mean, simple things that we take for granted, really wealthy people cannot do. It's very dangerous for them to do those things. Did you ever think of that? Yeah? Did you ever think that, you know, you go to the grocery store and you're mobbed? You can't even walk down the aisle of the grocery store to get what you need, because everybody would recognize you and come mob you? Yeah? One time many years ago, I was asked to help. Bill Gates' best friend was dying of cancer, and I was asked to help the family. And I was also, I led the memorial service, which was at Gates' house. And after I left there, I came home and I went for a walk in the park near, you know, the place where I lived, and I felt this feeling of like freedom, and I felt real compassion for the Gates family, because they can't do the small, tiny things that I do. They couldn't go take a walk in the park. You know, just the family go out in the park. They can't do that. Huh? So, you know, we have to look with compassion at the suffering of people who have too much. Yeah. Of course, you know, I think we need to look at the suffering of and have compassion for the people who have too little also, because that's really a bummer, you know, when you don't have enough to eat. I was, just in the break time, I was reading the writing of one of the inmates that I've corresponded with for many years. He kind of sent me some of his writings, like a journal that he does. Tracy, you typed it up. Yeah? So maybe you remember it was the last entry. And he was saying, he was brought up in Detroit, yeah, and he said, you know, he would go home sometimes when he was little, And the only thing in the refrigerator was a box of baking soda. Yeah. And so he was the oldest of the kids that were living at home. You know, his parents were strung out on drugs. He had to find some way to get money to feed himself and the younger kids. Yeah, so from the time he was like 11 or 12, yeah, he started working the streets. You know? And drug dealing was a very good vocation. It brought in a lot of money very quickly. Yeah, and when you're 12 years old and you can't go get a regular job, and you need to eat, yeah, you deal drugs. Yeah. And he said, you know, and then of course when he was older, he was arrested. He's getting out in November, which is incredible. He's been in prison, I think, 23 years. From the time he was 18, he was robbing somebody. He had a weapon. He was robbing somebody of a coat. Yeah. And because of having the weapon and robbing this coat, he got a sentence of 23 years. He was black. I don't think they would have given a white 18-year-old that sentence. And, you know, and he said, yeah, that situation, that, you know, the circumstance I was brought up with, that's what led me to be in this courtroom in front of a person a judge who was a Harvard graduate, who has no idea of what it's like to not have food in the house and to have your parents not be able to provide for you. Huh? So I was quite touched by what he wrote, because he was not angry when he wrote it. He just was stating it like it is. Yeah. Okay, so you suffer too much, you suffer with too little. It's true. You suffer if rich, you suffer if starved. So you suffer if rich, you suffer if you're poor. Yeah? I mean, I just went through a whole situation like this, which I won't describe to you. But it's really true. The rich have a kind of suffering that the poor never know. And the poor have a kind of suffering the rich never know. And either way, it stinks. Yeah? Okay? You suffer if rich, you suffer if starved. My thing is cut off. We waste our entire lives in preparations. True or not true? How much time have you spent in this retreat on preparations? Sometimes I've spent like whole retreats thinking about all the Dharma practice I'm going to do in the future. You know, not even preparing for worldly things, but preparing for Dharma things. Yeah, I'm going to go here, and I'm going to study this text with this teacher, and I'm going to go there and do this retreat, and then I'm going to go here and do this and that, and go there and with this teacher. And the mind is in la-la, Dharma land, planning activities. Meanwhile, never practicing right now in this very moment. Some of you are smiling. I think you know what I'm talking about. Okay. But that's just Dharma plans. What about our worldly plans? Yeah? I bet you've all thought of what you're going to do when you get home from the retreat. Yeah? And then you start looking forward to going home so you can do those things when you get home. But before you came to the retreat, you were looking forward to coming to the retreat and planning everything you were going to do here. And now you're here, you're planning everything you do when you go home. And when you get home, then you're going to plan your next retreat. Okay? So the only time we ever live is now. But it seems like most of now we spend planning for the future. And we not only plan for our own future, we plan for the future of the people around us. One of my friends told me that after he had his first child, he was holding the infant in his arms, and he realized that he already had it planned for her to go to college. You know? And I know for myself, I never had any option of whether to go to college or not. I knew from the time I was in preschool that that's what I had to do. It was planned out. It was not optional. Yeah? So parents often plan their whole kids' lives without asking the kid, what do you want to do with your life? Okay? Then we plan everybody else's life. Yeah? If you're in a relationship, you plan your partner's life. Yeah? What they should do, where they should go. Maybe you're the one who takes care of the money, so then you plan the whole financial situation for the couple. Yeah? Or maybe you're the one who's in charge of, taking care of the social life of the couple. So you plan all the social things, So, in a couple relationship, each one has the things that they take charge of, that they plan, and the other one goes along with it, basically. Yeah, except when they don't, and then you fight. Yeah. But, we're always involved in plans, aren't we? Yeah, what I'm going to do, where I'm going to go, who I'm going to talk to, what I'm going to say to them. Yeah, and then after we have a situation, then we're reviewing it in our minds. They said this, they looked at me like that. I said this, I did that. Yeah, so that's why we have a retreat without speaking, because then we don't, at least we don't get each other involved in each other's plans and memories. Yeah, and then we're stuck with our own plans and our own memories in silence. Yeah. Yeah. And it gets kind of tiresome after a while, doesn't it? Although we never seem to get totally bored of, going through our own plans again, even if it's a trivial plan. Yeah? I'm going to go home and I'm going to, open that computer file, and then I'm going to answer that email, and then I'm going to do this. Well, maybe I should do it in the reverse order. Maybe I should do the email before I do the file. Yeah. And how much time do we spend on that? Okay, so we waste our entire lives in preparations, never really living now. And while in preparation, we all die. Yeah, and that's, when you look at the 9-point death meditation, one of the 9 points is we're always in the middle of doing something when we die. Yeah, we never die having accomplished all of our plans. Yeah, we're always in the middle of doing something, and death comes. You're in the middle of breathing in, and you die. Yeah, you're in the middle of a sentence, and you die. My dad, 3 months ago, was in the middle of his 93rd birthday party, and he died at the birthday party. Yeah? We're always in the middle of doing something. Yeah? My aunt died in the bathtub the morning her son was getting married. We're always doing something. Okay? So while in preparation, we die. Even in death, there is no end to preparations. Is this hell or is this hell? You know? The people who commit suicide, they have it so wrong. They think killing themselves is going to stop it. It doesn't. You know? Suicide is one of the most useless things you can ever do because it never stops the suffering. Yeah, because you just get reborn again. Okay. One of the other inmates I write to told me that, you know, he was contemplating killing himself at one point until he met the Dharma. And he learned about rebirth, and then he realized it's not going to work. Yeah, killing myself is not going to work. So he stopped thinking about it. Even in death, there is no end to preparation, for we begin preparations for the next life. Even now, we're beginning preparations for the next life, aren't we? Yeah, we make sure we create virtuous actions. We make sure we dedicate the merit. We make aspirational prayers for the kind of rebirth we want to have, to always meet fully qualified Mahayana and Vajrayana teachers, to always have all the conducive circumstances to be able to practice the Dharma. Yeah. We make all these kinds of prayers where, you know, we take precepts and we keep them. That's making preparation for our future lives. Okay? So even in death, there's no end to preparations, for we begin preparations for the next life. Yeah? In the bardo, we're always looking around. Where's my next body going to be? Where's my next life going to be? You're not thinking that consciously. You're just totally scattered running around. Okay? And so, he concludes, spit on those who continue to cling to this massive dukkha called cyclic existence. In other words, when you really look squarely at what cyclic existence is, it stinks. Yeah, why do we cling on to it? Trying to make our cyclic existence better when the whole thing stinks. Yeah? It's like, what would be a good example? It's like, if you've lived in India, you will understand this. If you've lived in a third world country. It's like trying to arrange, excuse my French, excuse my Latin. I don't want the French people to get offended. Excuse my French, but excuse my Latin. Excuse my whatever I'm talking. But if you've lived in India, okay, trying to tweak your samsara is like trying to arrange all the pieces of shit in an open sewer. Thinking that if you rearrange them in a different manner, they will stop stinking. Okay? That's what, it's a gross example, but that's what trying to tweak our samsara and make it better is like. You know, the whole situation is rotten. There's no way to make it into a good situation. The only way to deal with it is to develop the wisdom that overcomes the ignorance so that we can free ourselves once and for all from the situation and have a state of lasting peace and happiness. That's the only solution. Okay? And yet we keep trying to, in my life, if I just, was able to get this part of my life under control, or control everybody in this aspect of my life, then it would be okay. Yeah? If I just changed jobs and had a different supervisor, my life would be okay. If I just changed partners, my wife would just stop nagging me. If my husband would take his nose out of the sports page and say hello in the morning. If, whatever it is, this is driving you crazy. We always think, if I only change that thing, it'll all be okay. Will it? Not with a mind that is afflicted by ignorance, anger, and attachment. Okay, so the only solution is to develop wisdom. And, stop the rebirth under the influence of wisdom, under the influence of ignorance. So that's a one-stop, fulfills all remedy, isn't it? Yeah? Generate wisdom, overcome ignorance. Yeah, that'll do it all. Okay, any questions or comments so far?
This sounds a little on the downside. It sounds a little discouraging. I don't want to think I am attached to samsara, but I think you can have the same for life, even though we are in the process of learning, and we are in the process of acquiring the wisdom and helping others. And those are virtuous things. So it's not so bad. I mean, it's not perfect,
We're doing virtuous things, yes, that's true. And that's wonderful. And it's praiseworthy, and we should definitely do that, and we should rejoice at doing it.
Yeah.
But doing that without getting rid of the ignorance it's like it's like what? Yeah, it's like swimming upstream, or having a cancerous tumor in your body, and you put a Band-Aid on. Yeah, so it's good. It helps. It's like having a cut in your arm that's bleeding, and you put one Band-Aid here. Yeah, it's like that. So it's good. It helps. Yeah, but when it's possible to overcome, heal the whole slice in our arm, wouldn't that be nice?
It would, but it sounds so far. I feel I'm so far from awakening.
You feel like you're far from awakening, but they actually say that having a precious human life is halfway there.
But we don't have guarantees that you're going to go into a human life into the next life.
That's right, but we have it now.
So I might become awakening. And I'll feel like that.
Or we can certainly use our precious human life now to create lots of good causes so that we can have a precious human life in many, many future rebirths, so that we can practice the Dharma. Okay? That way you can have your samsara and go towards nirvana too. Yeah, that's what you wanted. You wanted some samsara in there.
I want the samsara, but I think I can't go through life thinking that so much to saying about all the effort that all the people who are not Buddhists put into life.
Yeah.
So they might do the wrong thing. there is some, I was raised Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't appreciate a lot of the core values of Catholicism.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we have something in common with
Mm-hmm.
but I can't believe that they build all these things and all these exchanges of generosity and volunteering and missionary actions out of something negative.
Did I say that?
No, but when you say that the life is so bad and it's like like Geisselmer. Oh my God, I saw that. I when you said that, I visualized the open street.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, no.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah. So those things, those actions are very good. And they're praiseworthy. But if you look at it from the big picture, those actions are not going to solve the whole dilemma.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah? So we rejoice in the fact that they're there. Yeah? But we realize that if there's a sewer, yeah, an open sewer, that taking the stuff out of one little part of it isn't going to clean up the whole thing. Yeah? That's all. Yeah? So you rejoice, If you have a sewer and you start cleaning it up, you rejoice at that.
And that's not attachment?
No.
No, okay.
No. Attachment is when you project good qualities that a situation or a person or an object doesn't have, or you exaggerate good qualities that it does have, and then you cling to it. But if something does have good qualities and you see it as something useful and desirable, that's not attachment. You should definitely go towards it. Yeah, people often get this confused. They think that wanting anything means you're attached to it. No. Yeah. You want to learn the Dharma. That's great. Yeah, that's a good kind of wanting. Okay. Yeah, you want to improve yourself. You want to be more generous. That's not attachment. Okay. Yeah.
So making the big jump between wanting fortunate rebirths and wanting fortunate rebirths to be able to create the causes and the time to be able to understand reality.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe just sinking in a little bit deeper this time is that the contaminated virtuous karma has a very, very specific purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Create the causes for these lives that we can meet the Dharma and meet the do
Right.
all this study. I keep downplaying the importance of that on one level, and sometimes I'm making that as the end goal, just to have that, and I keep forgetting to put them into a longer piece of a
Yeah.
specific purpose.
Yeah. So there's some people that just want a good rebirth so that they don't have to experience the lower realms. That's it. That's the reason for practicing. That's a virtuous motivation, but it's not going to take them beyond getting a good rebirth. Okay? So we're wanting a good rebirth not because it's an end to itself, but because we need that so that we can keep practicing, so that we can eventually attain full awakening. Okay. So our actual motivation is full awakening, and by the by, we get a good rebirth. Whereas if your motivation is for a good rebirth and nothing more, you don't get awakening as a byproduct of it.
For some reason, right now, I'm getting that piece on how crucial to create the causes for the string of rebirth.
Yeah, it's the most immediate thing we have to do. Yeah, because if we don't have a good rebirth, Yeah, what are we going to do to practice the Dharma to progress on the path? Yeah.
I see this life as actually trying to create some sort of causal momentum.
Yes.
Rather than keep cutting it off and having to start over.
Right. Like falling to the lower realms in the middle and then having to come out of them and then doing something and then you're back down, you know. Yeah. But it is. We want to create that kind of momentum. Mm-hmm.
When I first read studies about wisdom, especially when they use the word disgust,
Mm-hmm.
generate this kind of disgust for samsara, and I think that I've thought about that a number of times, and I think that I wasn't able to feel like I wasn't going to walk around in a morose manner if I held that view. Was the problem, you know? And then I guess I realized that first off, we're not talking about the world, we're talking about psychic existence.
Mm-hmm.
They're different.
They're different.
Also that sometimes I like the word disenchantment. That's already disenchanted, you know?
Yeah.
Then, so now it feels quite positive to me, and I can even use the word disgust.
Mm-hmm.
At first, I had to spend quite a while to
Yeah. Yeah, because we...
try out some things that I was putting together that didn't have
Yeah.
to go together.
Yeah, because we hear the word disgust, and then we think, oh, I'm going to walk all around all day just going, you're disgusting, and you're disgusting, and this chocolate cake is disgusting, and my life is disgusting. And yeah, and that's not it. That's not it. I mean, if you look at people who are practicing, do they seem like, you know, people who are depressed going around saying everything's disgusting? You know, no. They seem like people who are joyful. And even at the same time, they're seeing that samsara is disgusting. Yeah? So why are they being able to be joyful? Because they're not hanging on to samsara. And the people who don't see samsara as disgusting are hanging on to it and then becoming very unhappy because they can't get everything they want. Yeah? Whereas the people who practice, I can't get everything I want, what else is new? Let's get on with life. Yeah, much more realistic. Yeah, you know when you wake up in the morning, I'm not going to get everything I want. The day is not going to go the way I want it to. So then when you don't get everything you want and it doesn't go the way you want it to, you don't get bummed out. Yeah? You just say, well, of course. Yeah? But here's all these good things going on too that I rejoice at.